His movies are as popular in London as they are in Delhi. His reputation is as big in Hollywood as it is in Bollywood. Whether it's Mr. India or Masoom, Elizabeth or Bandit Queen, the audiences love them. But what's the man himself like? Judge for yourself, because my guest today is film director Shekhar Kapoor. Shekhar, looking at your life, it seems to have been an up and a down. Right at the top with Masoom and Mr. India, then suddenly everything you touch turns to stone. Then back again with Bandit Queen, and then the court cases begin, and now you're right at the top. Do you think life takes you by surprise every time?
Well, if it didn't, I'd be very bored. I think when I'm right up there on the top, I kind of feel, well, it gets a little boring, and I let myself slide down. Then when I'm sliding down, part of the momentum of sliding down takes you up, and then as you're coming down, you say, hey, I can't let that happen. And then sometimes, you know, you're like struck halfway between. You're climbing a mountain, you don't know when you're going up, whether you're coming down. But I think I drive myself to it. I think I just like this chaotic lifestyle because it makes me feel alive. When you're down, you get angry, all right? So then you fight your way to get up. When you get up, you get philosophical and lazy, because that's what philosophy is all about. And then you slide down again.
Okay, let's talk about this amazing life. Let's start with the personal side of it. You were born in pre-partition India in Lahore. What sort of family was it?
I have no memory of my family. My father's a doctor. He was and my mother was a journalist. And my father kind of practiced there. I actually did go back to Lahore when I was doing Bandit Queen, and I went back to work with Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, and so I actually went back to see my house. My father said, you know, there's this gully, and from the gully there's a college, and then you go left from that gully, and then there's a little house. And I went, and there was nobody living in the house. But there were, you know, how outside the compound of a house you can have cycle walas and pan walas and all these people. So I said, listen, I was born in this house, and said, "Tusi Dr. Kapoor de Mundo?" I said, yeah. He said, and they all started welcoming me, and they all hugged me, and they took me in, and apparently nobody's lived in that house since we left because it's been under litigation. But there it was, the house as my parents must have left it, you know, right
You
there.
were an only son in a Punjabi family. Were you spoiled like many Punjabi boys?
No. I wasn't spoiled, otherwise why would I have rebelled against my parents all the time?
Don't spoiled boys rebel?
Well, not rebel against the things that they get. I rebelled against everything that was given to me. Everything.
You were a prankster, I'm told. I believe that, in fact, as a child, your sister once wrote that you swallowed an entire bottle of sleeping tablets.
That's because I was hungry. That's all. You know, you look around for things to eat, and you think, okay, that bottle has something to eat, and that's all. I've always eaten too much. I've always been hungry, you know. I always wanted to eat, so I just...
And there was another occasion when you were cycling back from school and you tried to chase a bus and almost came a cropper.
Well, that's a reasonable thing to do. There was a very pretty girl in the bus.
Did you get to meet her?
She stuck her tongue out at me. That's why. She just went, she looked at me. I've been doing this for years. Well, months. I've been following this girl for months on my bicycle because I was in school and she was in school, and she used to go to the Convent of Jesus and Mary here, so I used to follow her just to try and get a look. And every day I would go after her on my bicycle, and the only time she noticed me or pretended to notice me, she looked at me and she looked at me and went, ugh. And I mean, it was the greatest moment of joy. She reacted, and I lost control, and I almost died being run over by a truck.
After school, in modern school, and then I think it was college, St. Stephen's College in Delhi, you went abroad to study as a chartered accountant, but you hated every minute of it.
I hated the fact I went abroad to study. It was just an agreement. My father wanted me to do something that was professional and regular.
So the one time you didn't rebel, you hated agreeing with him?
I actually went because I wanted to have fun. I mean, I went there to have fun, but I finished accountancy, but it wasn't me. It wasn't me. I couldn't really stand sitting in an office ticking books, and it wasn't...
Too many pinstripe gentlemen wearing formal ties?
I wore them. I wore them for a while, you know, and at first went, I had to wear pinstripes and an overcoat and a brolly, and can you imagine with a thing walking down the city? But what used to happen is I would come home in the evening and totally change. It was the years of the sexual freedom, and it was the hippie days of London.
Did you have long hair?
No, because they would cut it off, you know. I couldn't go with long hair into an accountant's office, but I used to have just big, broad ties and things. And I was absolutely a different person at work and a different person at play. Totally different. You wouldn't recognize me.
You also had something else in those days. You bought yourself, I gather, a Porsche, and it cost much more than you could afford, but you adored the car.
Well, you know, the one thing I learned in England is you could borrow money. And so I bought myself a Porsche. I mean, a little later in life, well, I just loved it. I used to cruise down King's Road all the time, showing off, and went all over Europe with it. I still love cars. I just love that car, yeah.
Okay, you came back from England and you moved almost immediately after a small gap into the film world, and you first started out as an actor. Movies like Ishq Ishq Ishq, Toote Khilone. Looking back, why did you not really succeed as an actor?
It's a very, very difficult question to answer because you have to think about it a lot. And probably the easiest answer is because I was bad. I wasn't a very good actor. I just thought, you know, I could just step in and become a Robert De Niro overnight, and it didn't happen. It doesn't happen for anybody. I thought I could just become another Nasiruddin Shah overnight. It doesn't happen.
So were you in a sense at that point in time taking an easy route in the film world? You thought fame would come with looks, and looks you certainly had.
Had? Did you
What?
say have or had? Thank you.
Have.
Yeah.
You're very conscious of them, aren't you?
No, I'm not very conscious of them, but you made me conscious of them suddenly. I'm on camera. Come on, you can't say these things to me. But no, I actually came back to become an assistant director. Nobody would take me on as an assistant director because I still wore a suit and I spoke the Queen's English, and nobody would take me on. But I found that I could get parts as an actor. But once I got onto the role, you know, I thought, well, why not make it as an actor? It seemed like a very easy thing to do. Didn't work. Didn't work. Actually, it worked much later on television.
Absolutely. In fact, it worked not just on television,
Yeah.
it worked in a big way even in the commercials you did. I mean, you were
Yeah.
very famous for a while. I won't mention the company, but the man who advertised the suiting. Was that because, in a sense, you enjoyed it more than the acting?
It was because, yeah, no, I didn't enjoy it more than the acting. It was just not as difficult. That's
Was
all.
the money better?
If you took it per minute, yes. Like so much money per minute, of course. I mean, commercials, you don't spend that much time. And it didn't ask me to be somebody else. It didn't ask for the same things that are asked as an actor. So it was
So
okay.
you felt more at home as a model?
Yeah, yeah, I felt okay. I mean, I felt okay. I think probably the money helped. Okay.
Okay, it was in around 82, 83, 84 that you began doing what you're today famous for. You began directing your first movie, Masoom.
Yeah.
But I gather the story came your way almost by accident.
I read a book called Man, Woman and Child, and I'm going to get sued for saying this, but and I really liked it. But that wasn't the film that I was going to make. I was going to make a film called Bardasht, and I went into I was asked by a producer, would you go into the financier and tell him the story? And the financier took a clock out and said, okay, if you've got 5 minutes, tell the story. So I started to tell him the story of Bardasht, which was a film I still want to make. I've never made it. And, you know, 2 minutes, tick, 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 going along, and he started going, and I saw my career kind of sliding down. And then I looked around, and I saw pictures of children. I said, this guy must love kids. How am I going to save my non-existent career? And suddenly, I started to turn the story, and I told him the story of Man, Woman, and Child. And I didn't, you know, halfway there, and my producer's looking at me, thinking, and he kicking me under the table. And he came out and he said, what did you do? I said, look, he just looked so bored with my story that I just told him the story of a book I read day before yesterday, because he seems to like children. And he got a call the next day from the financier saying, I love that story. This guy's really bright. You know, you should take him as the director. And there it was. Masoom was born out of that.
And in fact, Masoom went on to become one of the big hits, even though it was a small budget movie. Did its success surprise you?
Success always surprises me. Every time I start a film, I think, everybody's going to laugh at me. Well, first I think they're going to throw me out. Then if the film's made, I think it'll never release. Then I think they're going to laugh at me. You know, and then I think, okay, now a few critics like it, but then it succeeds in the box office. So every time I succeed, it really surprises me, because I start with zero. I think, that's it, everything's over. I'm just going to make a film. Everybody's going to laugh at me. I'm going to have to go home and sit and try.
So very strange, because you look like a man with an enormous amount of self-confidence, and yet actually what you're suggesting is that inside, deep down there, Shekhar Kapoor is vulnerable, uncertain, hesitant, never quite sure whether it's going to work or not.
God, that's sexy. That's fantastic. Yeah, that's what I am. Inside me, I'm vulnerable, a little boy lost. Now, that's also an image. That's also an image I project
So this
sometimes.
incredible eloquence that you're putting on, this wonderful, confident demeanor, is actually a defense.
Yeah, isn't it always? Isn't confidence always a defense? I mean, if I was really confident, I would not be successful. Art or cinema or anything that you do in life is born of not knowing. In fact, you know, when I was making Elizabeth, the first thing I must tell you is that the first thing, when Kate Blanchett and everybody came on to the set, and they all came loaded with information about the characters they were playing, and I just said, you know what, something? Let's all agree on one thing. You don't know anything. And they all looked at me and I said, I don't know anything. All we can hope to do is to go out and discover if there's anything to know. So let's go out and discover if there's anything to know. So confidence actually is counterproductive to life. All right? An aura of confidence is what people need to believe you know everything, otherwise nobody would give me any money. You wouldn't want to talk to me, nobody would want to talk to me. So I have to have this veneer of confidence surrounding chaos and non-confidence and not knowing and happiness.
Okay, but if all of this is just a veneer that you have to put on because it's an essential trick and it's a PR mechanism, in reality, however, in '95, when you got married for the second time to Suchitra, did she actually give you a real confidence? Has she actually changed you? Because many of your friends say, he's a different man since then.
I go home in the evenings, that's different. And no, yeah, she gave me some kind of stability, sure. I mean, I'm a much more stable person. I can actually sit at home, because before I met Suchitra, I'd be out of a house like that and would never get back unless
So she's curbed the restlessness a little?
She's focused the restlessness a little bit. That's what she's done. She's not curbed it, because to curb my restlessness would kill me. But she's focused it, so I can take my restlessness and actually put it somewhere useful. First, it was just frittered away everywhere, just all over the place. I was just like a little puppy that goes sniffing everywhere. No. Now, delete that. Just delete that. I was just like a little puppy, that's all.
Okay, you're going to be a father pretty soon. I know I'm not allowed to say how old you are, but certainly you're becoming a father.
You can say how old I am as long as you lie, that's fine.
55.
That's a lie.
It's an amazing...
That's total lie.
It's an amazing age at which to become a father. Are you approaching fatherhood with a certain nervousness? Are you excited about it?
I'm trying very hard to convince myself it's all in the laps of the gods, and that has nothing to do with me, and that
sounds very nervous.
Yeah, it's very nervous.
Very nervous.
Yes, that it's all got to do with destiny, and every child goes, I'll read Khalil Gibran and says it's got nothing to do with you. Children are members of this universe, and the moment you start to individualize them, you're wrong. So I'm taking all those philosophies in, which means I'm very nervous.
You're studying desperately hard to be a good father.
I'm just studying very hard, yes. I'm totally nervous, yeah.
Shekhar, let's take a quick break. At that point, I want to come back and talk about Elizabeth, and I also want to talk about some of the things you're going to be doing in the future hereafter. But first, a little break. Don't go away. We'll be back in a couple of moments. Welcome back. My guest is Shekhar Kapoor. Shekhar, let's talk about Elizabeth.
What's that?
The movie Elizabeth that you're director of, you've forgotten it so quickly?
No, I was the director of it.
You
It was
were.
done some time ago.
So it's in the past already for you?
Yeah, I mean, every moment that I wake up, I'm a different person.
Although, you know, for us it's very much in the present because it's premiering in India this particular week, so that's why I want to talk about it.
Okay.
How did you get the job? It almost happened, I'm told, by accident.
No, accident, everything, life is an accident, okay? So everything that happens is an accident. But I was sitting in Los Angeles wondering what to do. After Bandit Queen, all the films that are being offered had something to do with action because of the action Bandit Queen. And I was hoping somebody would come up to give me a film that was unexpected. And this producer turned up and said, would you like to direct Elizabeth? I said, who? And he said, Elizabeth, the Queen. I said, well, what's interesting about her? I thought they were talking about the current Queen. And they said, no, Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen. I said, yeah, the word virgin. Suddenly said, yeah, yeah, I'll do something like the Virgin
Attracted
Queen.
for all the wrong reasons.
All the wrong reasons, yeah.
In fact, I gather when you looked at the script for the first time, you were quite disappointed with it, and by the time you were satisfied, it had gone through some 10 or 11 drafts.
Yeah, because the scripts felt like a history lesson. I would have gone to sleep all the time in school and college. If the history, I was asleep, totally asleep. So I thought, oh shit, all my audiences are going to go right to sleep if I make this film. I just panicked. I wanted to walk out that film at that time. But then I called the writer. I just told him what I felt. I told the producers what I felt. And they said, well, it's your movie, you know, you sit down and work at it. So I saw draft 1 and we shot draft 15. So you can imagine the amount of hard work we put in.
Somewhere you said that the original lacked subtext. What did you mean?
That a film is not necessarily about what is said is not necessarily all that the film's about. If I speak or an actor speaks a line, that line is less important in what it says. It is much more important in what it doesn't say. A gesture, a cut. So subtext is about how people in the theater can relate in thousands of ways to what the character is doing on the screen. Otherwise, it's just about the Queen. How do 1 million people who went to see this film relate to their own lives? that's subtext. That connection is subtext.
So if I were to say that perhaps one of the most striking things about the film is your interpretation of Elizabeth and the journey you make her traverse before she becomes the famous queen, would you agree?
Yeah, it was Indira Gandhi's journey.
So in fact you had Indira Gandhi in mind when you were making Elizabeth?
Yeah. That's the one way I relate it, because you have to find relationships with the character. So the closest relationship that I could find was with Indira Gandhi. It was the same story. I mean, the end is not the same, but the journey was the same.
In a sense, what you see over here is a young girl who's joyous, vivacious, becoming slowly through circumstances ruthless.
Yeah.
That's Indira Gandhi, that's Elizabeth.
Through force of circumstances.
Through force of circumstances.
Has no choice but to become ruthless. So the whole thing is about, it's my own, this is what I keep wondering about life, you know. What is more important, to be powerful and ruthless and successful, or to be joyous and wonderful and in love? So which way do you go? Which way do I go? Of course, and
Elizabeth, in a sense, poses that question for you.
Yeah, that's the question.
You're actually asking that of the audience as they're watching the film.
And myself, as I'm making the film.
You know, in a sense, of course, as an Indian, you were an outsider to the story of Elizabeth. Did that make it easier for you to assess and describe her in these terms, or does it make it more dangerous for you to try and do it?
It makes it easier because I am not stuck in rules that I learned when I was a kid about this person. It makes it exciting because it's dangerous, you know. That's, in that sense, yes.
But what about when British critics turn around and say, as some of them sadly have, that the Elizabeth you've created doesn't resemble the historical character that they know? Does that comment worry you?
No, because I retorted to that. I said, but because the historical Elizabeth was the one that they created. And they created Elizabeth in their own minds according to their interpretations that they needed. And I've created Elizabeth in my own mind according to the interpretations that I needed.
And you have a right to your creation.
I have a right to my creation anyway. You know what? Elizabeth actually created her own image, so nobody knows the true Elizabeth.
So any interpretation will do?
Yeah, any interpretation.
It can't be right, it can't be wrong, it's just another one.
Yeah, she was the greatest political figure of all time. She had every painting that was ever made of her destroyed, and every writing that was ever written about her destroyed. People could only write about her what she wanted. So she stated, I'm a virgin. So people had to write she was a virgin.
You know, but you said something very interesting there. You said she was the greatest political figure of her time, and that's absolutely true.
Of all time.
Of all time. But then Elizabeth is not just an interesting person, she's also a character in a period of history that was almost a turning point in Britain. And therefore the events in her life are not just events in her life, they're events in history. Do they get in your film, in a sense, the historical significance they deserve?
I'm more telling the story of one person, but the events are important in the context of the journey of this character. But the fact is that if Elizabeth hadn't been around, or if she had died, or she'd been killed before she became queen,
those events wouldn't have happened.
Well, we would not have been conquered by Britain. She created the navy. That was the beginnings of the empire. Was Elizabeth? She created it. Otherwise,
signed the charter for the East India Company in 1599.
Yeah.
Okay, this in a sense was also a challenge for you in another respect. This is the first time you were making a movie, not just with the British audience in mind, but with a foreign subject. And that was a transition from what you've been doing previously. Was it a difficult transition?
You know, I found that once I get onto the sets, nothing changes. It's the same director that comes out in you and says, okay, Shekhar, sit here, I'm the director. So somebody comes out.
Is that because movie making is the same no matter where you do it, or is it because Shekhar Kapoor remains the same?
Because the director in Shekhar Kapoor remains the same. What becomes different is the politics that surround filmmaking. They're huge, you know. So you have to deal differently with the politics. But once you get through the politics that surround filmmaking and get onto the sets, it's the same person.
But as a director, how do you find audiences responding? Do Western audiences differ greatly to Indian audiences? And do you have to do different things to appeal to them and attract them?
Ultimately, films succeed on an emotional level. So once you've got through, so between, say, Western and Eastern audiences, say, between educated and uneducated audiences, the approach becomes different. It's ultimately having to get over the logical brain, and the logical brain differs according to where you are, but the illogical brain, the subconscious, is the same. And the idea for a successful film, or for me to relate to people, is to connect with the subconscious.
You sound almost as if you're suggesting that a director has to be slightly more intellectually self-conscious when he's making a film for the West, and perhaps more emotionally aware when he's doing it for an audience in India.
I think a director has to be seductive. And the director has to seduce the conscious mind and the logical mind into submission.
Well, being seductive couldn't have been too difficult for you, given all that you've been telling me in part one.
I didn't say anything. You suggested it. I merely nodded my head. It's all.
You said somewhere of yourself that the secret of success is an ability to break the rules and an ability to go that extra mile. So does that make you a hard-working rebel?
I'm very rebellious, sometimes unreasonably so. And sometimes I'm asking myself, why are you rebelling? There's nothing to rebel against.
But are you hardworking too? Do you push yourself to that last degree?
Yeah. When I get obsessed by something, that I will. I can't help it. I don't push myself. I get pushed.
By something inside there?
Or something outside there. You know, creativity, I don't know where it comes from, but once it grabs you, it's like the devil. You know, it's like you just get obsessed.
There's a devil inside Shekhar Kapoor that is both the driving force and the creative genius.
Oh, I'll use that somewhere. Thanks.
Okay, what now? I gather from the papers that you're involved in at least 4 or 5 different projects, one of which is a Mandela film, another of which is with Andrew Lloyd Webber, maybe 2 with Andrew Lloyd Webber, and then there's also something you're doing for Spielberg.
Yeah.
Which of these comes first?
I'm not sure. All of them are being written. I suspect that Phantom of the Opera as a film with Webber might come through, and something called Four Feathers might come through. But I'm just watching to see, but I know that July this year I'm going to start shooting a movie because it's been a long time since I shot a movie. So, but what's happening is that I have to approve the scripts.
So the July target is set,
Yeah.
Now you have to find the script you want to do in July.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about Andrew Lloyd Webber. That means you're going to branch into musicals for the first time, Western musicals.
Yes, yeah, Andrew Lloyd Webber is a creative genius.
But does that worry you? Because Western musicals are such a stereotyped genre and so different to anything you've done.
You know what? When I made Elizabeth, everybody said to me that it's the costume, formal costume British drama is very stereotyped genre. I just went out to break it, and took my experience of Hindi cinema and shot that.
It's the challenge that really excites you.
It's a challenge. When people say it can't be done, then there's something that grows inside you that says, of course it can. You can do it. Go do it. And so I'll do it. And I don't believe in a genre that exists for a musical. I think you just go make it and see what happens.
And what about coming back to Bombay? Are you ever enthused by the idea of coming home and making a blockbuster?
Yeah, constantly. Every time I come back, I keep surfing the net. I think that I think Bombay and India is really, really exciting because it's so chaotic. And how can chaos not be more exciting than organization?
So despite Hollywood and all the charms of success abroad, Bombay remains in Shekhar Kapoor's blood.
Oh yeah, totally, absolutely.
Well, Shekhar, let's hope very soon you come back and make that blockbuster. I think there are millions and millions of people who will want to see it. Thank you very much for this wonderful interview.
Thank you very much. Thanks.